that the question will be asked, why are we celebrating more debt?
It's really a shame that the international financial community, these debts that we are now going to be incurring to finance our attempts at recovery, are like lending money to a business that suffered losses through some kind of crisis. That is the world that we as Jamaicans, both you on that side and us on this side, have to navigate.
Wagwan, my Jamaican family, and once again welcome back to the Yadi Reactivities. For the first time you are checking me out, kindly subscribe, like and share to my YouTube channel. And to my returning subscribers, I do want to say thank you very much for the love and support you are always giving on to me. And about today, guys, we want to dive in onto this amazing video, and whereby it is all about the Jamaican Prime Minister Andrew Holness and his wife Juliette Holness, and whereby it seems like they have, dived into some troubles, whereby onto it we have got the party leader of the PNP, Mark Golding, and whereby he has just dropped a bombshell towards Andrew Holness and Juliette Holness. So I want you to watch this entire video to the end, and I'll be back with more.
We will approach reconstruction as a growth-inducing strategy. I know from this that the question will be asked, why are we celebrating more debt? We are not celebrating more debt. What we are celebrating is the opportunity to make a massive investment in our infrastructure, in our people, in the services that improve productivity. And it is that investment, Madam Speaker, that will expand our economy relative to our debt. And therefore, in short order, you can look forward to growing, increased revenue, and a relatively smaller debt to the size of your economy. We have never before had an opportunity to spend $6.7 billion relative to our GDP. We have never had that opportunity. US and our GDP is somewhere in the region of about 17 to 18 billion dollars, $19 billion, thereabout. The Minister of Finance reminded me, $20 billion. You are proud, as are we, proud of the fact. Yes, $20 billion. So you get an opportunity to, within 3 years, to deploy $6.7 billion relative to your $20 billion GDP. So you can see the opportunity to expand the economy. And that's what the strategy is. And I'm encouraging all Jamaicans, regardless of political persuasion, to embrace this opportunity, to shift from crisis mode, to move from disputes over the distribution of a care package here or some lumber there, and start to think, how are we going to play our part in the new possibilities provided here for all Jamaicans to benefit? So, the reconstruction effort being deployed, digitalization, logistics, agriculture, and energy will create thousands of jobs, crowded private investment, sustainability. Because make no mistake, there will be those looking on at our currency and say, can the central bank defend? Do we have reserves? Well, with this, we will be in a superior fiscal position to give confidence and certainty to our business sector. We will turn this moment of crisis into an opportunity to transform. Madam Speaker, Jamaica has never lacked ambition. What we have lacked for decades is the financial wherewithal to match that ambition. Today, that has changed. For the first time in our history, our national development vision is backed by a robust, multi-year, multi-partner financing envelope. Madam Speaker, we now have a clear reconstruction strategy, an empowered institutional framework.
And this year, we got walloped by Melissa. It's really a shame that the international financial community, is still approaching the mitigation of the effects of climate-induced disasters on countries like ours by financing packages that are largely based on additional debt. These debts that we are now going to be incurring to finance our attempts at recovery are like lending money to a business that suffered losses through some kind of crisis that is trying to dig itself out of a hole from. Taking on additional debt to do that is going to be a challenging road for any country. Therefore, I don't think it's appropriate to treat these announcements in a triumphant way. We are going to be incurring the costs of paying back this massive additional borrowing in years to come. We are in a country which has spent the last 15 years seeking to get ourselves out of a debt trap, where we've had to run massive primary surpluses every year consistently to reduce our debt to GDP ratio, with a target that's written into our law incidentally by a government from this side, which we were anticipating would have been met this year before Melissa struck us. And now we are facing a new era of massive incremental borrowing. If you look at 3.6 billion US of sovereign debt, that's over 25% of GDP of additional borrowing. That does, and the 662 billion already available, only less than half of that is in a form that's not debt. Most of that is debt as well. This $2.4 billion of private capital, we look forward to seeing whether that will be forthcoming and in what volumes, because you can't project that you're going to receive private investment as part of your recovery. I'm glad that the multilaterals are going to support the effort, but at the end of the day, investors have to be willing and there have to be projects available to them that are bankable and investable. So we will see whether or not that happens. But the reality is that only 12 million US out of $7 billion is grant funding. Only 12 million US out of over 6 billion of programmed US funding is grant funding. That is the world that we as Jamaicans, both you on that side and us on this side, have to navigate.
Procedo, members' time for speaking has expired. Procedo, the members' time for speaking has expired.
We didn't visit your Prime Minister's speech with the kind of response that you're giving mine.
Madam Speaker, as the time for the opposition leader has expired, we ask that you give him sufficient time to complete his presentation.
House, the question is that the leader of opposition be allowed an additional 5 minutes to complete his presentation. No, members, I am going to ask that no one asks for sufficient time to complete, because those words can mean a 2-hour, 3-hour presentation like the member from St. Andrew South. Yes, Angela, you know it's you, who spoke for hours. What is your point of order? What's your point of order? You're correct.
That violates the standing
Member, you're correct. But it is not in keeping with the approach of Parliament to speak until conclusion, whenever that is. And we have learned our lesson, as the member so nicely stood up and reminded us. So she knows who we are speaking of. So 5 minutes, House. Those in favor? Those against the ayes have it. House Leader?
Yeah, I suppose I should be grateful, though it's a very parsimonious allocation of time to respond to such an important speech on such an important occasion. It's symptomatic of what is wrong with this Parliament, that the Leader of the Opposition is given 5 minutes more to finish a presentation. Anyway, that is the world in which we are being required to live. Madam Speaker, the institution which has been announced to oversee the recovery process, which does not yet exist, it is just an announcement thus far. This National, I think, Resilience and Recovery or Resilience Authority, NARA, is going to, we are told, be responsible for the relief resources being spent in a judicious way, in a way that's efficient, in a way that is accountable and transparent, and in a way that accords with a sensible policy of recovery. After all, the PIOJ has indicated that this financial quarter that we're in now, the economy is going to contract by some 11, I think, to 13% of GDP relative to the same quarter last year. That is a massive contraction. And it's going to further exacerbate the debt to GDP ratio because, of course, the debt to GDP ratio has two components. There's debt and there's GDP. So what we're seeing here is that debt is going to be growing dramatically and GDP is in the process of a free fall as a result of this terrible calamity that has hit us. So while I admire and indeed share optimism about the future, because Jamaica is such a resilient and special country, and we will get through this, I think we should approach an announcement like this with some sobriety. This event has caused us to retrace our steps substantially from the economic path we were on, and which the nation incurred substantial sacrifices to get to where we were. I'm not blaming the government for Melissa. That would be absurd. I'm not blaming the government for seeking resources to fund the recovery. It's going to be necessary to get those resources. I am just making the point that this is not something to celebrate. This is not something to gloat about. This represents a substantial setback for Jamaica, and it represents if it's not administered properly, it could permanently weaken our future prospects and damage the country's future. Which is all the more reason why the composition of this recovery authority is important. I wrote to the Prime Minister on the day after the hurricane to suggest the establishment of a task force with broad-based representation, leaders from the private sector and business community, leaders from the churches, leaders from the NGOs, and representatives from the government and the opposition. The concept of NARA is consistent with that. However, I've heard nothing from the Prime Minister as to the role of the opposition in NARA. We heard it will be broad-based, but there is no inclusivity in the dialogue around how it is to be constituted. And I can hear from the barbs that are flowing from the other side that the likelihood is that we will not be included in it. That is what I'm hearing from the other side in their responses to me, their sotto voce remarks. All I can say is, Prime Minister, the opposition represents some 400,000 voters who voted for us, 28 constituencies, and our presence in the recovery and our participation in the recovery, you'll be well advised to seek in a genuine...
House Leader, the member's time for speaking has expired.
Thank you. As the member's time for speaking has expired, I ask that you put to the House that he be allowed an additional 2 minutes to complete his presentation.
Brother, always a big theme. Interesting talk, you know?
Complete your presentation, Opposition Leader. Complete your presentation, Opposition Leader.
Another generous allocation of time. Thank you very much.
And Opposition Leader,
Yes.
Prime Minister got 10 minutes extra on 12 minutes for statement by Minister.
Right. I won't be nearly as long.
And you got
I'm
half
wrapping
of that time.
I'm wrapping up.
Yeah.
It's not in my nature to be long-winded. So, Prime Minister, the point I was making is, I think you would be well advised to seek, in an authentic way, the inclusion of the opposition in the governance arrangements over which these funds will be administered on this recovery, because Jamaica is facing an unprecedented disaster, the scale of which is indeed awesome and frightening to those who have to encounter it on a daily basis in several parishes across the land. So, Prime Minister, I wait to hear your thoughts on this. I have asked you about it for a month now. You haven't indicated to me your views, but you know, I'm putting to you today again what I consider to be the optimal approach to dealing with this particular matter. Time is short and I've been asked to finish within 2 minutes, so I will wrap up now. More or none. We will be hearing about the fiscal rules and we will be hearing about the suspension of the fiscal rules, no doubt. And I'm looking forward to the discussion around that, where I'll have an opportunity to say some more on these matters. Thank you, Madam.
So, thank you, Madam Speaker. You made mention of the human dignity component with your transition to digital cards or an alternative means to food distribution. In your presentation, I note that the purpose of loans, albeit that you are celebrating and we ought to celebrate restoring the country, the aspect as to whether or not there was any consideration of persons who simply won't be able to access your electronic system to access basic necessities for the food and anything else that comes with it. Mm-hmm. Also, in terms of an allocation, is there a specific sum that goes to the persons who are the primary victims and should be the ultimate beneficiary of any loan given? That is to ensure that the lives of the people are restored in a position better or at a minimum to the position they were before the disaster. And ask lastly that any consideration should consider the Constitution and the guidance on human rights when that is done. Thank you.
The member.
Right. Thank you very much. Prime Minister, in speaking about the next phase, and in particular moving from relief to recovery, I had a question in terms of, I think you had mentioned something about cash transfers earlier, though not specifically in here, but it ties in. So the question I wanted to ask is whether or not in the distribution of cash, allocation of cash transfers, whether gender-sensitive targeting will be used, especially given the fact that we know that targeting households that are led female heads that really brings more fairness. And I was wondering whether or not that was contemplated in what you were planning to do. The other question that I have was really around also integrating emergency cash relief into existing welfare programs. We haven't heard much spoken about that, but I believe that that is important, although issues of connectivity and network would hamper how successful that can be. But as we are moving to restore, I am asking, where are we with that, and hoping that we will do that. Prime Minister, you speak in the reconstruction effort being deployed across infrastructure, housing, digitalization, logistics, agriculture, and energy, that thousands of jobs will be created. Again, Prime Minister, the question I'm asking, I'm looking at how Ministry of Labour and Social Security and some of those who have done the assessment, I'm looking at the cry on the ground about the partisan nature of how it has been done, how some communities have been totally left out, and I'm wondering what will be done differently to ensure that those thousands of jobs that are created for Jamaicans and not on a partisan basis.
Welcome back, guys. I hope you've watched this entire video to the end and you have heard whatever is taking place throughout the video. And as I told you earlier on, it is the concerns whereby, Andrew Holness and his wife just, dived into some troubles. And as we know, Juliette Holness is the Speaker of the Parliament in Jamaica, and yet again, she is the wife to the Prime Minister Andrew Holness. And so the controversials are Andrew Holness decided to appoint his wife as the Speaker of the Parliament. So as whatever kind of case that will come around him, he is going to definitely win the case, and that's definitely truth, mainly because even the Speaker of the Parliament is from the JLP party. So definitely when the Prime Minister is on the wrong side and they decide to report him or whatever, he's going to win. Yeah. And so here, Mark Golding from the PNP side just dropped a bombshell. As it is usually noted, it seems like Mark Golding is one of the kind of a leader that usually have that eager on helping the people of Jamaica. But as I usually say, I never want to fall into deep politics, simply because politicians are just politicians. And most of them usually have got the sweet tongue, and they have got the convincing tongue and lips. With them, we have endured their promises, and when they are given the chances, they usually go beside it. So what are these troubles whereby the Prime Minister's wife has engaged into? We have seen a couple of the PNP party members, bringing out concerns into the Parliament, and thereafter they're being shut down, or rather their mics are being shut down. There was one PNP party member that brought out concerns onto the Parliament, and Juliette Holness ended up shutting her mic down. Like, this JLP party is oppressing the PNP party, and yet they are members of the Parliament. When you bring out concerns, you need to give us answers. There was a certain point whereby, even someone from the JLP party had to cover up for PNP party, mainly because whatever he saw Juliette Holness doing is not right. As it is said, she was given out some questions and it was expected to be answered onto the Parliament. But when they returned to the House of Representatives, Juliette Holness said that the questions were handed unto her late, so she had no time to review them and she cannot give answers to that, and it is said it was given before 24 hours. So definitely she had more time to review it and come with answers. So yeah, these are cases that are going on into the Jamaican Parliament, and this is the main reasons why the people of Jamaica are not going to get whatever they want. The government cannot work for the people of Jamaica if they are not going to be on the same track. Despite of your matters being, opposition parties, all you need to do is come around together and think on a way on how you're going to work for the people, and not each and every time is, chaos into the parliament simply because of this and this and this and this and this and this that doesn't make even any sense. Yeah. So the Jamaican government, which is the JLP party, they need to focus and they need to know what the people of Jamaica needs. And they're supposed to be coming to with the PNP party so as they can make decisions and end up with conclusions on how to rebuild Jamaica back after the Hurricane Melissa. And instead of taking out the hurricane funds and yo boy, this is definitely insane. We don't want to see our leaders fighting onto the parliament instead of coming out with solutions. And as it is said, this is being done because Juliette Holness, being the Speaker of the Parliament, is the wife to Andrew Holness, and that there is no day she is going to go behind her husband. This is the man that she is going, when she's out of work and he is out of work, they will meet on the same house, they will sleep on the same bed, and they will, everything they are doing together. So definitely they never are going to betray each other. And in fact, for Juliette Holness to be on that spot, it's definitely by the power of her husband, Andrew Holness, being the Prime Minister. Yeah, so all they need to do is just have the responsibility and know on how they are going to, work for the people of Jamaica and stop all these chaos throughout the parliament, fighting because we are opposition. Bring out cases, bring out, stuff that we are going to talk about on how to breed and recreate the country and make it firm. Not just chaos merely because we only think about ourselves as leaders. That doesn't make any kind of sense. So guys, I need to know whatever you think about this amazing video. Let's come around, share our thoughts throughout the comment section so we can get to interact and know what you think, and mainly because your opinion does matters to us every day. Thank you very much guys for following up the video with me. I was your host Yadi React. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, kindly subscribe, like and share to my YouTube channel. And to my returning subscribers, I do want to say thank you very much for the love and support you are always giving on to me. Always remember to link me up through my next videos. All I do want to say is peace out there.